All right, we are back with another episode of Second Opinion. Today, we're going to review a really strong pitch deck from a company called Food Fix. But before we get into it, we're going to re-review the practical approach to making great pitch decks that achieve your outcomes so that it can inform our review of an already really strong pitch deck from the company that submitted. So this may be new to many of you, but this is what I like to call a very pragmatic approach to creating your pitch deck, where we start at the end and reverse engineer a pitch to achieve the outcomes that we want to achieve. And if you're a startup, very likely the outcome you want to achieve is to receive a check from your investors. And in order to do that, we need to understand the process by which an investor looks at a pitch deck and turns that pitch deck into an investment opportunity. So we start at the end. If you start back here, we're looking to receive a check. And in order to receive that check, we need a meeting opportunity with that investor. In order to receive that meeting opportunity with that investor, most likely in many cases need them to spend a few minutes reading our pitch deck to get excited enough to grant us that meeting opportunity. And in order to get them to spend the 3 minutes or 2 minutes to deep read the pitch deck enough to want to have that meeting opportunity so that they can write that check, we often need to pass the 30-second scan, the 30-second skim smell test so that an investor is interested enough to spend time with your pitch deck. How do we get them to do that? Well, it's very difficult. They're looking at hundreds of pitch decks, especially at the earliest of stages, and looking for startups that are worth investing in. And to just understand the very basic incentive of a venture capital investor, they're looking to achieve a power law outcome with each check that they write. This, obviously varies from investor to investor, but is probably the most universal incentive across all of venture capital. Can this investment opportunity return my fund and create the power law outcome that we need? And so from there, we like to just boil down what makes a company, a potential power law outcome. And instead of, frameworks that tell you what to include and all of these different slides that you need to include in your pitch deck, we like to boil it down into 6 key points. Number 1 is a problem people are willing to pay to get solved. That willingness to pay is an important burden to uphold. A reason why now is the time for it to be solved finally. A product that effectively solves that problem. So what are you actually delivering to solve this problem? And then a market that's clearly big enough for a solution to that problem to reach a very large valuation. Market size is very critical, and it must be large enough to facilitate a large potential valuation so that an investor can achieve their power law. A team that can more than reliably solve this problem, and proof that this might actually work. Things like traction, things like customer interviews, building strong tech. So if we can really just nail these 6 things and get those across in a 30-second skim, then we might have a chance to have that investor spend more time with our pitch deck and grant us that meeting opportunity so that they can write the check. So with that, let's take a look at the pitch deck from Food Fix and see how it fares across this rubric. So here's Food Fix. I'm going to scan really quickly through the pitch deck. We're not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to give it that 30-second scan and see if it fares with the 6-pronged power law rubric. So Food Fix, building the Spotify for recipes. The online cooking ecosystem is broken for home cooks, creators, and brands. Okay. There's a problem for home cooks from video to cooking. Home cooks use 4 apps and no single flow. We solve for that very complex flow. For home cooks, there is infrastructure for recipes and home cooking. It can be confusing. There's competitors, but they fail to solve the problem in a very effective way. There's a problem for creators that are creating these recipes. They drive billions of views, but their income is low, unstable, and platform dependent. We make it easy for them to publish rich content on Food Fix and unlock new revenue streams for creators. That's great. And then brands have a problem. There's $140 billion in grocery and appliance marketing that's wasted. Brands can't get right to home cooks. That makes sense. If we can help them advertise more effectively, we're providing value to brands. Great. They have this business model where they can monetize all 3 prongs of this marketplace. They've got some traction with this value proposition. They're getting traction on all fronts. If I read the fine print, it can see that they have 70 creators, hundreds of recipes, 11,000 app installs, 5 brands, and a retailer on the platform. That's great. They have a plan to get to more of these people and more of their customers. That's great. Revenue projections, rapid D2C expansion followed by creators and brands across the world, it looks like. a very large market size with, $61 billion across this, kind of complexly built out market. A really strong team, an epic team, serial entrepreneurs who love tech and food, and an ask and a goal. Okay, great. So first thing that I noticed from this deck is that it's really well composed. Design is really professional. It's exciting. It looks like this is a legitimate brand. I'm already predisposed to thinking that this company has some credibility. Clearly break the problem out into 3 prongs with home cooks, creators, and brands, and then deliver problems and solutions for each of these key stakeholders. So the deck follows a clearly logical flow, and I honestly am impressed with the way they use information design to keep it engaging. I can follow the story at a high level. I grasp the 30-second scan, and now I can spend more time understanding each of their points with strong information design and good copywriting. Now, where do I think that they could be doing a better job? Well, number one, if we think back to our rubric, we need to be communicating this power law opportunity and the important things like traction, market size, how this becomes a big business and more than just a problem solve needs to be a little bit more front and center in this pitch deck as opposed to buried towards the end of the deck. Most startups, as we discussed, need to communicate this power law opportunity, but when we're dealing with a consumer app that also is a marketplace, we have 2 more hurdles to overcome from the consumer app side, making it clear that this has that viral potential. People actually like using this app. Maybe there's downloads or there's time spent on app that can show that this app is actually working and people are enjoying using the app. So from a consumer app perspective, we need to show that traction. And then from a marketplace perspective, we need to very clearly show how we solve problems for each component of this marketplace and can build all sides at either a simultaneous period of time or in some sort of sequential period of time where we're building the supply side to make the demand side, that much easier to grow, vice versa. So do they do a great job on all of that? Kind of, yes, at least on the marketplace side. They do a really smart thing where they break the problem out into the 3 different stakeholders, and then they have, slides to show how they solve this problem and create that willingness to pay for each of these stakeholders. But from the consumer app perspective, it's not clear to me as I'm scrolling through this deck that this is a product in motion, that there's momentum, or is this just a really good idea that, in theory could solve a problem for people? Luckily, it looks like they do have some solid traction and that this isn't just a proposed idea, but there's 11,000 app installs, there's creators on the platform, there's brands that are already engaging with the platform. And so something like this likely could be either, number one, better illustrated with big numbers and more numbers, maybe showing how long people are spending on the platform and up into the right chart, ways for me to feel like this is not just a really good idea, but this is a business, not just a product that's in motion and gaining momentum. But also they likely should lead with this, as opposed to leaving it on slide 11 of 17 so that I'm, efficiently predisposed to feeling like this is a business in motion, and then they're describing how and why this is working for the customers on the platform. So I would be thinking, how can I, either create an executive summary slide or just invert the narrative to, as opposed to following the traditional kind of problem, solution, opportunity, kind of pitch deck time frame, actually hitting people over the head, boom, we are a product in motion, we have 11,000 app installs, we have creators on the platform, people are joining every day, let me explain to you why this works. Now, on top of that, we have this big market size towards the very end of the deck. And again, because I'm an investor and I'm looking to achieve this power law outcome, this is something that I probably do care about, enough so that this could be woven in towards the top of the deck so that I'm thinking, okay, here's Food Fix. They're gaining a lot of traction and are tracking towards achieving a niche consumer app marketplace in a $61 billion market. And we can make the case that our business can, kind of capture a piece of the pie of this really large market. Now I'm more excited about the opportunity so that when I do, spend time reading how we're providing value for each of these stakeholders, I'm, feeling like this is more credible than more aspirational in the way that it's currently written. Otherwise, I think they do a pretty good job of, hitting off on the 6 pillars of what creates a power law outcome and doing so in a way that's pretty skimmable and reward somebody for spending time with the deck. I just think that there is, some optimizations in understanding, okay, who am I communicating this to? I'm communicating this to investors who want to understand that this is a legitimate business, not just a cool product. How can I re-engineer or just kind of tweak up my story so that the important points that investors care about aren't missed? That could manifest in kicking the deck off with, we're food fix, we're gaining all this traction, here are the numbers to show this traction. We believe this can help us attack this $61 billion TAM. Let me now show you how it all works, in ideally a little bit more of a concise way. This is some nitpicking, but some high level things that just going to optimize the way that this pitch deck is interpreted by somebody who's not necessarily going to be spending a ton of time reading through this pitch deck. We want to make sure they don't miss the good traction, they don't miss the big market size, and that they are caring a little bit more about the story when they read all of the logic behind why we're creating value for the customers on the platform. So good job, FoodFix team. Hope this was helpful, and we'll be back with a future episode of Second Opinion soon.